My mission in life is to prove that you can build technology out of the UAE that is innovative and export it across the world.
Yeah.
We don't need to copy anybody else's business model. We don't need to do a business that was done somewhere else and replicate it. What Seafood Souq is building is very, very unique. It was an idea that was born out of this part of the world. And I'm confident that if we continue on this trajectory that we're on for the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be a global tech player in a very niche space, I admit that. But we'll be a global technology player that is exporting from the UAE.
Yeah. Why the seafood supply chain is so broken.
The global studies show that 1 in 5 pieces of seafood that you eat is mislabeled.
What it means to build a mission-driven company at scale.
If you're a founder that is in a position that you can think like that, it's pretty privileged. Most founders will be sitting there wondering where the next round of funding will come from to continue building what they were building.
What's one tool or habit that keeps you focused as an entrepreneur?
And what keeps me focused, because there are days you get distracted, there are days where things don't go your way, is find a way to go back to those customers and hear from them how things are going or how much we've helped them. When I find out that our firm, the business, our team has really made a change, you go back and you wake up the next morning thinking, okay, I'm going to keep working at this.
If seafood had a tagline for its next chapter, what would it be?
We like to say we're building a better blue economy.
What's your favorite fish to eat?
Red snapper, actually. Just very, 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 very fond of red snapper.
Can you provide an overview of Seafood Souq today?
Let's start with the supply chain.
Welcome back to our podcast where we dive into the stories behind game-changing leaders, bold ideas, and the futures being built today. I'm Sonia Waymuller, co-founder and general partner at Venture Souq, and today we're going deep, literally and figuratively, into the seafood supply chain. Our guest is someone who's not only rethinking how we source and consume seafood, but who's also proving that innovation, transparency, and sustainability can go hand in hand with commercial success. Fahim Al Qasimi is the founder of Seafood Souq, a digital platform revolutionizing the seafood industry by creating end-to-end traceability from ocean to plate. With a background in government, entrepreneurship, and sustainability, Fahim brings a rare, systems-level perspective to solving some of the most complex challenges in our global food system. In this conversation, we'll talk about how Seafood Souq started, why the seafood supply chain is so broken, how technology can be used to fix it. We'll also explore what it means to build a mission-driven company at scale, the lessons that Fahim has learned in conscious leadership, and where the future of sustainable food is headed. Whether you care about ocean health, startup grit, building conscious leadership skill sets, or you simply want to know where your food really comes from, this is a conversation worth hearing. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Fahim.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with how it all started from the beginning. Talk about what inspired you to start Seafood Souq in the first place, and whether there was perhaps an aha moment where you realized, had some sort of epiphany that you needed to start looking to solve an issue in this space.
Yeah, it's a really difficult story to tell because 6.5 years in, so much has changed that looking back at day zero seems like a lifetime ago. The one thing I knew was that the ocean, anything involved, any entrepreneurial venture involved in the ocean was something that sparked my interest. I'd already had built with 2 dear friends the surf house and was always involved in entrepreneurship and trying to build communities around the ocean. And it was a dinner conversation with a friend of mine who had started an oyster farm here in the UAE, where he was unfortunately challenged by the fact that the supply chain wasn't showcasing with enough transparency his product. And the 3 of us, Sean, Dennis, Rami, Murray, and I, decided there at that dinner that we would try to start a business to address that problem. The part that a lot of people don't hear about, I think, in entrepreneurship is what the next 6 months look like. It was very much out of our pocket, funding the research, the analysis around where the problems in the supply chain were. And we had put our heads together and found one key challenge. Today, we import quite a lot of seafood from abroad in this country, and we found out that we could very efficiently deliver it to clients without having a huge, warehousing asset or cold storage and so forth. I remember being in my house at the time with the guys, and we sort of charted this out. And I think the one aha moment was, well, if we can trace the product from catch to the airport, it was flown in to the UAE, and then from the airport directly to the customer, we could provide some form of traceability. And the more we double clicked on that, the deeper we went into the research there, we found that there wasn't much transparency in what we're eating. And I think the rest is history. And,
and is this something that you feel is specific to this region, that lack of transparency, or do you feel like it's something that is a global challenge? And secondly, related question was, when you started thinking about this with the others, did you start looking at other platforms in other parts of the world that were doing this well or not so well? Or really were you trying to come up with a more customized, localized platform to solve the very tangible local issue that you were facing?
I don't want to quote the global studies because the global studies are important, but what's happening on the ground here is what we were focused on. The global studies show that 1 in 5 pieces of seafood that you eat is mislabeled. I think that figure is just very broad stroke. How do you define mislabeling? What is being mislabeled? Is it the date? Is it the product? Is it the treatment of the product? For us, we just saw an extreme opportunity, an immediate business need, I think is the way to describe it, for us to start earning revenue. At the end of the day, you're a business, and we're not a charity, and we had to find a commercial model to help build that transparency. It was driven by 2 things. I think one, personally, I really care about the oceans. And I think anybody that knows me or has heard about the other work that I do, our ocean health is one of my life's missions, is just to play the small part that I can in supporting the resilience of our ocean environment. The second part, and I think this comes from a place of privilege, is that if you have the right to ask where your food comes from, then it's your responsibility to ask where your food comes from. We live in a part of the world where we source food from all over the world. And if you are fortunate enough to choose what to eat, because I appreciate not a lot of people have that choice, then it's at least your responsibility to know that what you are choosing to eat is not harming the environment. And I think that's the core of where our mission started, and we've continued to build on that product and on our business model to arrive where we are today.
Okay. And you have a very kind of atypical, I would say, kind of founder profile as you wear different hats. How do you feel like your background specifically has shaped the way that you started to think about building Seafood Souq in the way that you did?
A lot of people know me for my work in diplomacy and in government relations. But before that, I spent a very long time as an analyst, either in consulting or then in sovereign wealth. And I'm laser focused on data. And I remember a conversation, Sonia, very early in the journey of Seafood Souq, where I picked up the phone and I called my brother, who was working at the Ministry of Environment at the time, and I said, I'm trying to find seafood data. And where do I find this? And he said, well, the FAO has it, but it's about 2 years trailing. I thought, in this day and age, we haven't got access to live data that allows us to be able to analyze, assess, come up with, infer some sort of trend economically. And that I think was one of the tools that I just brought to the business in terms of being laser focused on the numbers and laser focused on the data. And
also having that global exposure through your diplomacy work as well, right? I mean, that gave you exposure to different markets, different challenges in some of those markets we're probably facing, access to those markets as well. I mean, you're dealing with a massive supply chain, right? It's not just a UAE focus. It's not like everything happens in the UAE, right? You're dealing with other markets in Southeast Asia, in South Africa, etc. So that level of exposure probably was also helpful as you started thinking kind of outside the box on how to build your platform.
Yeah, I think we have a global team. I think I'm more proud, rather than highlighting my experience, I think the magic of the United Arab Emirates is you have such a diverse team.
Cosmopolitan, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that diversity helps you build businesses, whether it's breaking down language barriers, understanding different markets, also being in a global hub where those clients are usually traveling through the Emirates, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We have those interactions with them and we have the ability to connect with them. And that was, like I say, I'm generalizing over 6.5 years of experience now, but it has helped along the way.
But let's talk about the business itself now and where you are with the business today and the different product streams that you have. Can you provide an overview of Seafood Souq today?
I think 6 years in, and for anybody listening that is thinking or about starting an entrepreneurial journey, or somebody that is maybe in year 2 or 3, I think the one thing I've learned more than anything is it takes a lot longer than you expect. the old adage of you overestimate what you can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what you can achieve in 5.
Yeah.
And if you allow me, Sonia, I'll chart through the journey, because there were global trends that had impacted our journey as a firm. We started just before COVID, where we had identified we needed to act as an intermediary in the supply chain. The seafood industry is an industry that doesn't traditionally adopt technology, and we were B2B. So we said, let's act as an intermediary. That's how we identified the need for traceability. And we started literally trading fish in that supply chain, predominantly bringing into the UAE. With that, it allowed us to build, develop, iterate the digital tools that we were predominantly using ourselves. Then COVID happened. Supply chains were disrupted. Mm-hmm. And we saw a huge amount of growth in our ability to play a role in a more efficient intermediary. And frankly, we focused on that because it was a big revenue driver in the business. That grew up until about 1.5 years ago, and we identified 2 things. One, the fiscal or the financial constraints that we had in order to continue building that model. And then the second part was really the impact that we were providing. And the concern around the impact, I think, made us as a management team put our heads together, really think where the value of the business was going. Yes, this also happened to coincide with the time that a lot of people were focused on AI. And we took a really hard decision about 1.5 years ago to completely restructure the business from a North Star perspective, but really just focus in on one part of the business that we were delivering really, really well. And that was the technology products. So that's been, I think the last 18 months has been proving that those tools, 1, have product market fit, 2, have global scalability, and 3, are very value accretive to what we're building as a business going forward.
So let's go kind of one level deeper in terms of what you're providing, kind of tangibly in terms of those tools today.
Let's start with the supply chain. Today, the seafood industry, that part of your food basket, is very complex. It's complex because you have over 2,300 different products just in seafood, and they're split globally. The statistics will say 50-50. I still think it's 40-60. 40% today is farmed. That's aquaculture, where people are farming sea bass, sea bream, prawns, salmon. But 60%, we still extract from the earth. That part of the seafood, or that part of your food basket, is more like mining than it is like farming. And I think that was where we decided we would build some tools to help the fishing industry start registering where their catch comes from. So we were trading, and still do, act as an intermediary for a pole and line tuna fishery in South Africa. We built them digital logbooks and a fisheries management dashboard. Those tools today allow those fishers and the fishery, i.e. the person that buys the fish and then sells it on, to prove that they were fishing more sustainably. Pole and line fishing means no nets, no long lines. They catch one fish at a time, and that product is treated. Further down the supply chain, there's no way to differentiate between pole and line caught tuna versus net caught or long line caught tuna without having those tools. So we started really at the start of the supply chain and said, here's a tool that we could build. Osama, our CTO, worked hand in hand with fishermen on boats about the things that they needed to make their process more efficient. And that's how we got the adoption.
And how receptive were the fishermen?
I think when you work with, and I'll say this now so because it'll be repeated throughout, it didn't take bleeding edge tech. You know, everybody thinks we're a blockchain company. We're not. It took really clever product design. And I think that's what Osama is very good at, was working with the fishers to say, what works? What other features would you like? It's not about building tech in isolation, you know, in an ivory tower and then taking it out to market, right? It's very much about co-developing it with them. And a lesson for any entrepreneurs listening is case studies sell.
Yes.
When you've built that first case, then you go to other people and you say, this is not an out-of-the-box solution. This can be customized to what your needs are. And how do we continue to develop and co-develop a technology suite that works for you? And I think that for us was a fantastic use case for digital tools on mobile, on desktop, for fishers and fisheries to access it. Accessibility is hugely important, Sonia. I think you highlight that. It has to be cost effective. I'd love to build this on blockchain, but it increases the price. You're working in an industry with very small margins. How do you make it, how do you make the business case for them to adopt it? So that was one part of the sort of suite of tools that we had. The second part was then in the middle of the supply chain. That's a relatively new product. We have the tools for aquaculture farms, for distributors in the supply chain to provide a large amount of traceability in their processes. We have competition in that space. There are some really great companies that are also building tools in that space, specifically in North America, but they really address the wider food group. We've stayed quite focused on providing tools for the seafood industry. The last product, which is, it's very difficult as a founder to talk about your favorite products within your technology suite, but the one product that I give my co-CEO Scott full credit for was we had a hotel in the UAE ask us to provide them only traceable seafood. Now, we do trade only traceable seafood. It's something we're very proud that we do, but to deliver daily deliveries to a hotel was not within our business model.
Yeah.
And Scott and the team had come up with the idea to provide an audit. To say, well, why don't we build a digital tool that allows you to assess your auditing? Very fortunate that we worked with some great hotel groups that frankly encouraged, if not forced, the local supply chain to start providing a lot more documentation. And today we're thrilled that we actually have covered about 80% of the distributors in the UAE that are supplying to the hospitality industry. And we've allowed them to improve their sustainable sourcing by using this audit tool. And SFS Audit, as it's called, is a very, very simple tool that has taken a traditionally paper-based process and provided a huge amount of data and insights. Going back to what I said earlier about really being focused on data.
And the rationale for these hospitality players is consumer kind of feedback? Are they doing this for the consumers? Are they doing this to abide by certain regulation? Are they doing it to look good?
It started with, it's been a fascinating journey. And I think I'm trying to make sure that I'm providing a little bit of insight into to anybody listening that's thinking about an entrepreneurial journey, or an entrepreneur listening going, what has Seafood Souq done and how did they get where they got to? You have to listen to your customers, especially when you're working B2B, because you have the opportunity to get that feedback very quickly. When you're working B2C, it's very difficult to speak to hundreds of thousands of users. When you have big corporates that are telling you something that they need, build it for them. What happened with our audit product was it started off with very much let's understand where we are because we want to know we're not harming the environment. And we use our tool to assess all seafood sourcing across a number of key frameworks. The first one is the Global Dialogue on Seafood Traceability. It's a framework that looks at key data elements and critical tracking events that allows you to sort of score how transparent your supply chain is. Then we looked at the IUCN, Endangered Species Lists. Plus we look at certification like MSC and ASC, these organizations that certify wild caught and aquaculture. It is unfortunate to say that the results were less than stunning. There was a huge amount of products that were assumed to have been certified that were not. And there was about 16% mislabeling generally across the industry. That's things like saying this is wild caught sea bass from France when in fact it's aquaculture from Spain. I'll give you a data point that is a little bit worrying. We did a 6-week audit across 55 products and found that 40% of them couldn't be traced back to its original origin. Had no proof of where this fish actually came from.
And this fish is being distributed in like supermarkets, or is this being served at restaurants across the country?
It's across the entire country.
Okay.
And this is a global issue. So when working with the suppliers, sometimes it's not the supplier's fault. It's actually the suppliers not getting the information further up the supply chain.
Yeah.
So we're now building tools for our suppliers to really help them improve on the transparency part. You ask why the hotels are doing this, and we're looking forward to getting into retail and catering as well, supermarket retail. It started with this, I think, general push for companies that want to do good.
Push from?
Corporate sustainability teams. Yeah. The oceans matter. We want to know we're sustainably sourcing. When you start looking into the data, some products, by being mislabeled, have a 300% price differential. Like we did an assessment. There was a price differential for one hotel that was about 240,000 dirhams. It's called about $80,000 worth of mislabeling a year. Yeah. So it suddenly became a procurement cost question, and the procurement team started to appreciate it. Yeah. And the chefs want to provide really great quality food. The procurement teams want to make sure they get what they're paying for. Yeah. And then the last one that I think has been for me, the biggest eye-opener, and maybe something that you'll see me talk about more and more, regulations across the world are increasing in terms of food control and food safety. God forbid there is a breakout of salmonella, listeria, something within a product group. How do you trace that back to where that source was to prevent a health scare in your city, in your country, if you don't have that traceability?
Yeah.
So I think, and we can speak frankly about this, the world is maybe in a position where the environment is not on the pedestal it used to be. And in absence of, as regulations change, and anybody listening, you are not in control of where regulations are going as an entrepreneur. You sometimes need to find out what else you're providing. And being multi-layered in terms of value proposition allows you to continue to win irrespective of where the world is shifting or different markets shift.
And as a founder in this space specifically, how important is it for you to work with the regulators that apply to your space, if at all?
Tough question. Because as a diplomat, I'll say that, it's extremely important, and we're very fortunate we work in a country that has very quick policymaking.
Yeah.
The US just delayed its adoption of a very key regulation that would support us by a couple of years. But coincidentally, we just won our first client in the US.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. So, irrespective of regulation, I think, you have to continue providing that value proposition, and being multi-layered in your value proposition will matter in absence of regulation. I will say something cautiously, and I'm trying to remain humble in saying this. You might think you are really important as a startup or as a technology company, and that regulators should listen to you because you know more. Governments have a lot on their plates, and your one cool tech idea might not get their attention. I think you need to go out and prove that it works on the ground with industry before, sitting there holding your hand up to your investors saying, well, the reason we didn't win was because the regulators didn't adopt it. I think your risk register should have that, and you should have a business plan and an execution plan that happens if the regulation doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
You can't rely on a binary use of regulation for you to succeed or not succeed. Also, the minute the regulation comes in, competition also comes in.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you're not that important. You're a business, you're building a product, you're trying to sell your product.
I agree. With that said, again, being a bit of an eternal optimist, but we do live in a country, as you alluded to, where there is that accessibility to the regulators. And, I think that's one of the reasons why people love to kind of launch companies out of here, is because it's a small market, but at the same time, it's really a great market to test things out. And oftentimes you can get the ear of the regulator as they look to, shift policies, and they can do so in a very quick manner, as you said. Do you feel like, has any of the work that you've done with Seafood Souq impacted how the regulators or how the policymakers think about this space specifically? And if so, how?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we will in the near term. I will say where I've been more impressed and more thankful that I work in the UAE is the innovative companies that are here.
Yeah.
We're a B2B company, and our clients are all the largest hotel groups.
Yeah.
And those hotel groups have been extremely innovative.
Yeah.
And they've been extremely forward thinking. And without them, we wouldn't be able to have built the products we have built. So I actually thank our customers more than anything. And if you allow me to name them, Atlantis Hotels, Jumeirah Hotels, Novotel Hotels, Wasl Hospitality, those businesses did not need to adopt what we were doing, but worked with us and allowed us to build these tools for them to improve, what they were already doing very well. And without them, we wouldn't be in the position that we were in.
And for the founders who are listening, so when you're dealing with corporates like these, what specific team do you work with? Is there like an innovation team that's in-house that you work with? Is it more of in your case, like, is it the head of sustainability at some of these corporates? Is it a mix and mash, I guess, of all of them?
I also think understanding the industries you work in is very, very important as an entrepreneur. So I'll highlight a couple of maybe anecdotes that'll, I hope, be helpful for people listening. Number one is industries are not homogeneous, right? The hospitality industry, if one hotel group has a head of sustainability, it doesn't mean there'll be one in another hotel group.
Yeah.
And then even within saying that, the powers within, sustainability is a very abstract, broad term. What sustainability means for one hotel might be very different from another.
Exactly.
So therefore, your TAM may look a lot bigger than it actually is when you start working with them. So that's point number one. Number two, then understand that if you expand or segment your client base, you have to spend a lot of time learning how the others work. So we've done very well in hotels, and we, yes, work with sustainability teams, procurement teams, chefs, speaking directly to the chefs, the ones that make the decisions, understanding the decision-making process within a hotel group is extremely important. I'll double click on that just to give you an indication. A chef decides what product is on his menu. It then goes to procurement. Procurement has access to procurement for that entire property, despite the fact that it may have restaurants that are operated by them or not operated by them. And the sustainability team is trying to access that data to try to improve the processes on the ground. We've built tools that allow the chefs to request audits of specific products if they're not happy with it. And you have to understand the internal tensions within those firms themselves. So that was, the hotel example. When you then move on to supermarket retail, which is a new industry we're getting into now, or a new client segmentation, spend your time learning before you go in and have that first meeting. Or walk in humbly. I'm very fortunate here to have spoken to the CEOs of some of the best supermarket retailers here. Don't go in, extremely bullish saying you can already solve their problems, but learn about where their problems are. Understand how their structures are working on the problems that how their org structures are actually set up. So in supermarket retail, you have compliance teams. Compliance in terms of making sure that the products that they procure that are on very, very different volumes and cadences than the hospitality industry is. And then you start speaking about the other industries we're getting into. Catering, flight catering is very much driven by local and global regulation. Yeah, because these catering firms actually serve international airlines as well. So I think that humility of you don't know everything yet, and even 6.5 years into our business, we're still learning about new industries and how they do things.
And back to your earlier point of always listen to the customer, right? And the customer is made up of different customers, right? So there's a value chain within that group as well. And if you really want to come up with a comprehensive product, then listen to all the different perspectives within that customer base.
I will say this though, Sonia, and I want to highlight something that I'm extremely proud of. If we can toot our own horn a little bit as Seafood Souq, but this product doesn't exist globally. There was no benchmark. And I think that's something that if you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting something, if there is a benchmark and build on it. In absence of a benchmark, we have to come up with the solution ourselves. And then we have to start just thinking about what is actually useful. And there it's even more important to speak to your client.
Yeah.
Really hearing where the customer's challenges are. I'm an angel investor, that. And I spend a lot of my time with entrepreneurs that come to me and tell me, this is what they want to do. And I use that very famous question from any angel investor is, what problem are you solving?
Yeah.
Really help me understand the problem you're solving. And if there is no problem, then I really question what the use case is, right?
Yeah.
Where that product market fit will be. So with us, it's very much having those conversations with clients and sitting down and saying, where are your problems? Saying, this is what we can build.
Yeah.
But tell me where your problems are.
So we've talked a lot about the UAE, but you go beyond the UAE as well, right? You have presence globally. And so when we talked about product market fit, how do you think about scaling the business across different markets? I mean, every market has different dynamics also and different regulations sometimes. So how do you think about that?
I'll give you a little secret in terms of what's happened over the last 18 months with the business and where we're extremely proud of where we arrived. And this is a bit of a long sort of breakdown of the different products that we have. Let's first address the question on trading. So we made a very strict decision that we would only trade traceable seafood with key products where we know we could compete. We do that globally, but within very key markets in products that we know we are good at, where we're really addressing a challenge of transparency. And frankly, as a business, it's what pulled us through the last 5 years, and it's de-risked a lot of the technology risk that we had by still having a brick and mortar type of business that's operating there. Putting that aside, the technology part for us was the most scalable, but it required a huge amount of investment into the technology. Very fortunately, with AI and where it's going today, we can continue to invest and innovate in our products to allow them to be more scalable. There is a lot of volume of data that nobody has digitized in the past that we are now digitizing, that is a big, big value creator within our business. So number one, how do you go global? You don't just continue selling what you're doing. You need to have the capital and the war chest to continue investing in the product. The second part for us is that in our space as a B2B business, we're two-sided. I'll use the audit product as an example. I mentioned we just got our first client in the US with the audit product. There was a large client in the US that wanted to audit its seafood procurement because of a sustainability drive. So we clearly understood there was a sustainability drive behind their purchasing decision. They had heard of us. We did not go to them.
Amazing.
They encouraged their supply chain to now start providing the paper-based documents that, were always there, but never digitized onto our system. One of those suppliers said, I love what you're doing. Can I take this to my other clients? So we're two-sided in the sense that we start building the network effect.
Yeah.
And our hope, our North Star, is that we build an ecosystem of digitizing all of this information that we can start building more transparency in seafood supply chains. Once again, very excited. You have to invest in new teams now that are focused on how do we build out that ecosystem and how do we measure, sort of return on investment, because CAC is very different. The customer acquisition costs are very, very difficult to assess in these B2B environments. But how do we now work and say, well, we found a client in this particular space. How do we draw that network out between client, suppliers, and their other clients to gain critical mass very quickly? And then we need to make sure that we continue to invest in that product. Because what we'll learn, I think, in the United States is their requirements, the documents they're supplying are very, very different.
Yeah.
And just as a small sort of end note on that point, one thing specifically when you're talking about, and I won't say AI just yet, let's just talk about machine learning. When you're in the United Arab Emirates, you have a huge competitive advantage in new spaces like this. See, as a country that imports from all over the world, that trades with all over the world, our audit system has documents from the United States, from Europe, from Africa, from Central Asia, from East Asia, from South Africa, from literally every corner of the globe. So when you're building technology that's now using, character recognition or trying to, digitize what has traditionally been a physical document space, we have a diversity of information that not every company has access to. And I think understanding sometimes where those competitive advantages are do two things. One, helps you build a better product. But for us as a firm as well, really showcases why it can only happen here in the UAE and can't be replicated anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't want to spend too much time on the kind of the fundraising journey, but I think it is important because one of kind of my missions is to just make sure that companies like yours that are mission driven and will have long-term positive outcomes to showcase that these are fundable. And, this is not bucketed as philanthropy. And this is like, we invested in Seafood Souq. We are a VC. We're not a philanthropy. And so I just want to touch on that a little bit through your fundraising journey. You've raised quite a bit of money from VCs specifically. So I think it's important to talk about that. In your case, the reason why we invested in you is also because the impact that you have is embedded in the commercial DNA of the company, right? So as the commercial KPI scale, so does the impact that you have as a company, which is what is important to us. Either anecdotally, do you want to share anything, or do you want to share kind of your view on companies such as yours that are, why are you smirking?
I'm smirking because we've been very serious up until this point, right? And you and I are not that serious usually. And if there's one topic I don't want to talk about, it's fundraising.
Okay, so do you want to, we don't have to talk about it.
No, I think let me...
I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but like one of the messages, and we can keep filming side, like we can also use bloopers, but is that I think it is important for people to just know that like you are a recipient of VC funding, right? And that you're not like, it's not some philanthropy that's kind of giving you a grant to do what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I think I've just come back from the UN Oceans Conference, and I was in a session with Goombuk. It was a fantastic session, but the world was talking about these extremely complex financial products that, we're going to set up these huge funds to change the oceans. And I stopped and I was very fortunate, and maybe don't have a great reputation there now because of what I said, but I started the entire conversation saying, we don't need hundreds of millions of complex financial products to solve the problems in the ocean.
Yeah.
We need to pilot very, very small projects.
And scale those.
And scale them.
Yeah.
I'll show you where my thinking is, and I'm happy to be corrected. You know this about me, Sonia. I like to put out ideas and workshop them and hear feedback from others. How I understand it today is that we work in a space that needs scientific proof, right? When you're working on environmental conservation. Science takes time. You have to have a pilot where you can produce scientific outcomes. Those scientific outcomes are the proof points that investors require to know that this actually works, right? In terms of philanthropy.
Yeah.
And then when you have those proof points, then you have large philanthropists start investing in scaling those solutions out. And the world works like any innovation in funding hundreds of pilots, one of them that makes sense. Can it be commercialized? Can it not be commercialized? When you build a business with impact at its core, our approach was very much, how do we solve a problem that people will pay for?
Yeah.
Even though that problem may not be, fully prevalent in the market today. So you have to build a business that is extremely resilient. We were very fortunate that our product worked. Our solution actually had a commercial use case.
Yeah.
And we've started scaling that. 2 notes to that. Number 1, we still had a part of the business that was making money in trading. Like, we had to de-risk our business model by saying, let's still focus on some not exactly bleeding edge tech work to keep this business going, which was an important decision that we made. And the other part is it also takes time. And I commend you, as all of our investors, not just for investing in us, but also in their portfolios, that the patience of knowing that it will take 6 years of iterating to get to where we are today is something that I personally have the privilege of doing as a founder. Is I get to work with this fantastic team where we're constantly questioning what else could we build to solve the problems we care about. Not everybody gets to do that. And when you have investors that can say, here's some money to start building that out, it's such a privilege. We don't have this valley of death model where we're a B2C company where it's just, okay, let's just show growth.
Yeah.
For us, it was very much, let's prove that we can build a product that has impact. And the minute we do, let's start building really accretive revenue in that. That is how we get to the next round.
And how important is that cap table of investors to you in terms of kind of the quality of investors that you look to approach? And like, how do you think about when you are having to raise money, and you have raised money in the past, like the type of investor profile that you want? Like, are you like, that's a strategic kind of thought process for you, right? In terms, or is it not? Or is it like, ahlan wa sahlan, any capital is good capital for us? Or are you actually aiming for, like, do you have a tiered list of investors? Like, these are the investors that make sense for us. They're aligned with our values. They will be strategic, like they will add strategic value in these different ways.
I think the recurring theme in this is going to be privilege. If you're a founder that is in a position that you can think like that, it's pretty privileged. Most founders will be sitting there wondering where the next round of funding will come from to continue building what they were building.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people misunderstand fundraising, that they think it's just, well, we'll just raise the next round. I think every funding round is supposed to unlock the next level of growth.
Yeah.
I'll be very transparent about where we were. We are in a transition phase of emerging as a far more tech-focused business, where the reason we're doing our next fundraise is to unlock growth in one particular part.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, we are thinking like that now, but maybe not so focused on impact. For those that have heard me speak about this before, my mission in life is to prove that you can build technology out of the UAE that is innovative and export it across the world.
Yeah.
We don't need to copy anybody else's business model. We don't need to do a business that was done somewhere else and replicate it. What Seafood Souq is building is very, very unique. It was an idea that was born out of this part of the world. And I'm confident that if we continue on this trajectory that we're on for the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be a global tech player in a very niche space. I admit that. But we'll be a global technology player that is exporting from the UAE.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm just conscious of time. So let's talk about kind of Seafood Souq's future a little bit. What are you most excited about, whether it be kind of geography-wise or product-wise, for the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months?
Go back to where we started. As an analyst, it's more the data that I'm seeing. I think for us, we've traced 26 million kilos of fish to date, right? And that's only really off the last, I'd say comfortably 2 years of that product really being adopted. 26 million kilos is about 130 million people that have eaten a portion of fish that know where their food comes from based on what we built. The amount of data that we have, I'll comfortably say this now without sounding like it's boasting. I think we have more data on seafood being imported and traded in the UAE than anybody else does.
Yes.
And I think that for me is a fantastic value proposition for data, for analytics. If we continue to grow our business in the way that we're growing, we're going to continue to basically hold the largest repository of food data in a country that is, very focused on food safety, very focused on food security. We will grow into new customer segments. Mm-hmm. We'll grow into new geographies. And we already are. I mentioned the US, but we're looking at London and Singapore and other areas too. And then third one is the question that most of our investors ask, except for you. You never asked me this question, which is, can you do this for other food groups?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I've asked.
Maybe you have.
Maybe not you, but maybe other team members, yeah.
And the question is why? And maybe this will come back to some of the questions that I know you want to ask, which is, do I, as Fahim, care as much about where my cucumbers come from as I do where my seafood comes from? And I think that's going to be a really existential question for Seafood Souq moving forward. I really care about the oceans. It's what made me start the business. It's why I've worked in this business for 6.5 years, despite having a lot of other things that take me away from it. It's why I care. It's why we got through the toughest days in this business. It's because I actually really care about, our oceans. The seafood category is a protein that is the lowest in the hierarchy of proteins. Everybody cares about where their beef comes from. Go to the supermarkets here and you will choose the country that you want and the cut that you want and the treatment that you're, the way it was fed. Chicken is then the second. A lot of people care about where their chicken comes from. Is it organic or not organic? The minute you get to seafood, it's just seafood. Maybe it's Norway. Maybe it's Scotland. Maybe it's wild
or
caught.
it's unidentified whitefish.
The one thing you should never eat is unidentified whitefish, in my humble opinion. The one bit of advice, anybody listening, please don't eat unidentified whitefish for your health, not just for the oceans. And I think that, we'll continue to be asked this question of whether or not what we've built is, yes, very impactful for the environment, but in today's world, really just a food safety and food control question.
I agree, but actually you bring up a really interesting point, which is what I care about when I look at founders I invest into is that why, right? What is the motivation behind what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? And you have a very strong passion for the space, which is driving what you're doing via Seafood Souq. Seafood Souq is just a channel for you, basically. You're channeling something that kind of motivates you at your core. But what you bring up, which is interesting, is that I think that motivation bit is there, obviously, and that's what's led you to launch Seafood Souq. What happens when there's an opportunity as a founder to explore other sectors that may be unrelated to that core area that you're passionate about, that do make commercial sense? Do you stick to the area? This is what you're talking about right now. Right? Do you stick just to the space that you're still very passionate about because there's still more opportunity to be explored within that space? Or do you assess those other commercial opportunities from other spaces that you may be less passionate about? And I'm not expecting an answer, by the way, but it is something that is interesting. It's kind of like, do you stick to your mission, or are you allowing yourself to mission drift a little bit because it makes commercial sense for the business?
So I can't answer this question because, like I say, this is the big existential sort of situation that we find ourselves in. And I'll answer it on two levels. First and foremost, if you're a founder listening to this, it's not about you. You have a fiscal duty as a business, and I come from traditional businesses and sovereign wealth, and you have a duty to build value for your shareholders. Right? So there will come a time,
especially if you take in money.
If you take in money, you have to be building value. The second part that I'll answer it on is you do have to make sure, though, that the decisions you're making are still true to what you promised you would deliver. And we went through that with the trading business. We could have taken on a lot of money and built a global trading marketplace, which is what a lot of people thought we were for a long time. Mm-hmm. We could have continued on that journey. It would have taken quite a lot of money to just trade any fish that we could get hold of and be an intermediary. But not only would we not be focused on impact, we may actually be harming our oceans in doing that. That's the hardest decision I have made in the last 6.5 years, is to actively turn down an opportunity that could have shown quite a lot of growth. That was hard. It was hard to tell our shareholders that. It was hard to, change course on some key metrics that we were previously held to account for. And I'm sorry that we're, being this honest when we're chatting, but that's not easy to do. In doing so, you have to prove where else this could go. And that's a conversation that I think will continue going. Do I care about food? 100%. It's a privilege to change that kind of thinking. But I want to make sure that we don't lose the rigor, the integrity in making sure that if we're going to build tools that look at other food groups, that they're not just an add-on, but they approach the same challenges or the same questions that we have, which is, what problem are we solving?
Yeah. All right. Closing rapid fire we're going to do. If Seafood had a tagline for its next chapter, what would it be?
A tagline?
Yeah.
We've not one for taglines. We like to say we're building a better blue economy.
Okay. What's your favorite fish to eat?
Red snapper, actually. Just very, 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 very fond of red snapper. The picture on Entrepreneur Magazine?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That's
the red
snapper.
That's a red
of course.
snapper.
What's one tool or habit that keeps you focused as an entrepreneur?
It's a really
We
tough
didn't talk
question.
about turtles, actually.
I was going to say, is this the first podcast that doesn't question doesn't bring up
Your passion for turtles?
my obsession with turtles?
But maybe that's what keeps you grounded.
No, what keeps me grounded?
Focused.
And they're two different things.
Yes,
I'll be
true.
very.
I had another question around grounded, but
what keeps me focused? I'll tell you what. This is maybe something that people won't expect me to say. What keeps me extremely focused is talking to our customers. Winning a customer is a big deal in a firm. When you're a business and you want a customer, and everybody gets really excited. There's claps around the office. Maybe you take everybody out for an exciting team lunch. Keeping that customer is just as important. And what keeps me focused, because there are days you get distracted, there are days where things don't go your way, is find a way to go back to those customers and hear from them, how things are going or how much we've helped them. And I think when you find out that you've really created value, I'm very extroverted. When I find out that our firm, the business, our team has really made a change, you go back and you wake up the next morning thinking, okay, I'm going to keep working at this.
I agree.
think that keeps focus.
Even as an investor, that's, it's always refreshing if a founder comes to me, one of our portfolio founders, and says, thank you so much for that intro that really helped in XYZ also. So last question, how can listeners get involved, whether they're consumers, potential investors, or advocates in this space?
Look, I think learn more about what we do. I think we're a B2B business with so many layers of products, and it's a complex supply chain. So, for fisheries, we have tools. For the intermediaries and for aquacultures, we have tools. And then for procurers of seafood, we have tools. Yeah. My question or my encouragement to anybody listening that wants to get involved is, if you want to help out for your own health and for the oceans, is just ask where your seafood comes from.
Yep. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap on today's episode with Fahim Al Qasimi. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and keep building what matters.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thanks, Fahim.
Take care.